Welcome, everybody, to episode 7 of Man We Need to Talk, the podcast that focuses on male mental health and the stigmas that are still attached to it in today's modern society. Happy New Year to you all. This year, we are going to start with an awesome interview with Rowan Wiechmann. Rowan is from Holland and he was in the Dutch Army, and he's come to share with us some of his knowledge and his skills and also what he's up to these days as a coach helping entrepreneurs as well. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Thank you. Okay, Happy New Year, Rowan.
Thank you, man.
I know 2020 was definitely a challenging year for me. I mean, how was it for you over in Holland?
It has been a challenging year in a good sense. So a lot of new opportunities coming my way. Also seeing how we can build a business during a pandemic is also something I definitely learned a lot from, not just from being a business owner, but more importantly from myself. So it's a beautiful year, my best year ever in a pandemic, but still a lot of challenges. Overcoming them makes that a nice opportunity, right?
Yeah, I think it's definitely interesting how something like, something as unprecedented as the pandemic can change the landscape of how we do things, isn't it? I suppose it can either break you or make you in a way, can it? Because you can either let it get on top of you and be like, oh, why has this happened to me in my lifetime? Or you can think, actually, no, this is an opportunity now to change things up and to step across new ground, isn't it?
Yeah, well, 100%. And to be honest, I've been on both sides in the last year. Like at the beginning, especially when I started out, I was all excited, all about that. It doesn't matter. It's not going to bother me. But especially during like the last quarter of last year, sometimes it got into my head, like, hey, this shit is not going to stop very quick.
Yeah.
And as well as for me, and I think for most of the entrepreneurs in the digital space, they want freedom. That's also something very important for me. And I'm all about leadership. And right now I see so much lack in leadership. So it is really was also getting into my mind, like what's going on. So I've been on both sides, and definitely it's a situation where we learn a lot about ourselves. We learn a lot about other people. Most importantly, that we always try to shift back and see what is in our control and how can we do something about our situation. So it's cool.
It definitely was a year where you certainly learnt a lot about yourself, I think. So just for listeners then, Rowan, tell us a little bit about where you're from and your upbringing then, if you don't mind, mate.
Yeah, so I'm a 26-year-old young man from the Netherlands. I've been in the army for about 6 years as a leader, and also have been in a corporate company where I lead teams up to 65 people. So a lot of leadership experience at a quite young age. Never have been a natural born leader. Always wanted to be a leader. So I became very passionate about it. And right now, I'm an online performance/business coach who helps men get the most out of themselves and as well out of their own businesses. Because I truly believe that you can excel in all areas of your life, and it shouldn't be like that you need to sacrifice so much what you also want to grow in to get just one thing. I think we would just want to have enough.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that last sentiment that you said there. So in terms of your upbringing, how did you find school? I know I was reading about you earlier, and you've said that you had kind of a hard time at school. Is that right, with confidence and stuff like that?
Yeah, especially back in the days, I was always a guy who was always looking up to other people. Like at a young age, at high school, I've been bullied because I was the smallest kid at school. And that of course, got me a big hit on my confidence, because before high school, like on the primary school, I was always like more of the popular kids. And then it shifted from being the one who was bullied by 10 guys every single day for at least a year. That got me thinking, like, why are other people so perfect and not me? That is the mindset that I had for a long period of time, like until I was, I think, 23, 24. So quite recently. I still had a lot of issues with it, even though I was in the military as a leader, even though I was doing things a lot of people never could imagine of doing. Still in my mind, I was insignificant to everybody outside of me. Around 2-3 years ago, I started to post content on Instagram because I'm very passionate about fitness. And I'm not a super huge jacked guy. I just like to work out. Of course, I've built some muscle, but the guys whom I looked up to were 10 times bigger than I was. So I was always thinking that was not something for me because I was not like them. But one day I just thought, like, you know what? I'm just going to follow my own path, just post content about fitness I'm passionate about. Don't bother too much about what other people think of me, because that was something I was always did. Like, hey, I don't want to, I don't want to let other people think ways about me that I don't want to. But to be honest, that was a shift for me, which changed my life about how I saw myself, because I finally did something I always wanted to do for a long period of time. And since then, my confidence went 10x.
Yeah, I can totally agree with what you say about putting content out there on socials and stuff. Before that, often what holds people back is that worry, like you say, about what people think of you and stuff like that. And I think as humans, sort of with a tribal instinct, we do often think like that. But when you do actually put yourself out there, it does get a lot easier then. And also you're starting to resonate with what you actually wanted to do as well. So that feels a lot better, doesn't it? So I can definitely relate to that. I'm just interested, Rowan, I know you mentioned that you had a hard time when you were bullied and stuff. Do you say that you really went about rebuilding your self-esteem? Because I can imagine that such bullying would have really damaged your self-esteem. What would you say were the fundamental things or changes that you made that helped you rebuild your self-esteem?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. And so, first thing, what I can recall is I just kept pushing, like, because even though I got bullied, even though my self-confidence was not super high, I was always happy. So it was something I always thought, like, you know what, I had more difficult times in life than just being bullied, because of my parents had a very bad divorce. And that was something I was communicated between both. When I was 12 years old, all talks about money, about all that stupid stuff 12-year-olds don't even have to be in business with. But still, I had to. It doesn't matter, but I learned a lot from it. And for me, it was, okay, you know what? There are more worse things in life. And every time that something happened towards me, I always thought at a really young age, there are way worse things in life, because I have uncles, family members, nephews, whatever other people in my life died at a very young age or too young. So I always thought, like, is this worse than death? No. So don't bother too much about it. I'm still alive and just keep pushing. So that was one of the main reasons. I could slow but steady build that confidence. One of the things I maybe got very lucky with is that I'm very social, and I'm a guy between introvert and extrovert. I call myself like the middleman. And sometimes I'm very introverted, and in public I'm very extroverted. Depends on the situation and the people I'm around with. But that both always kept me going. Even though in new situations, slow but steady, small steps help me grow and build it. And of course, being in the military, pushing that mindset, more discipline gives you a lot of confidence. So that was the accelerator, the catalyst of building so much confidence and discipline, which helped me increase my own confidence a lot. Because then it was from not so much self-esteem to leading teams of guys who were like twice my age when I was 18 years old. So it was, at that moment, I just had to step in that situation. It was like I didn't have any chance to think about it. I was trained for it, so I truly believed this is what I can do. Yeah, all those experiences all together are small building bricks to build up your confidence.
So you said there about your time in the military. So I know you were a sergeant in the military. Is that right?
Yeah.
So how did that come about? So how did you transition from the Rowan that was sort of developing into someone who maybe is not so confident, and how did you then transition into, how did that opportunity come about so you could join the military and then you started on that road to sort of becoming a strong leader?
Yeah, I think, and this is also something I forgot to mention in your previous question, is I always had also a lack of purpose. So I was not doing the best at school because I didn't know really what I wanted to do with my life. And then when I needed to make that decision, for me, it was more like, okay, my dad was in the National Reserve, so not in the real army, but only like when it's necessary. But that was something always inspired me. And at that moment, it was like, yeah, I never had a sense of purpose in my life. You know what? I want to make an impact on people. The only thing which I could think of making an impact on people back then was joining the army. And then when I could step into their mission of freedom and helping other people and saving the world in a sense like that, I basically got myself out of the equation of fear and things like that, because I was part of something bigger than myself. And that part back then got me linked to a purpose, which then also made me feel like I belong to other collective. And of course, when you belong to something, you also feel better.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think a lot of people in general, you know, men and women, we all want to have a purpose in life, don't we? Something that we feel that we belong to. And I know my dad was in the military as well. So he always said to me that he was in a similar sort of situation when he was 16. His life was sort of going off the rails, so maybe a bit more extreme. And then he met like a military recruiter in the street, and just by coincidence, he ended up joining the armed forces. And he's always said it's the best thing he ever done, because, like you said, to have that purpose and to be part of something, it's really helpful in terms of developing as a young man. Do you agree?
Yeah, 100%. And also for me, it was the best decision in my life and the best time in my life so far, until I became an entrepreneur and coach and prolonged my purpose and found my own specific purpose. So it's also what I've seen with a lot of guys. It's a game changer, because when you join the military, it doesn't mean that your life then it's always perfect. I know a lot of guys who are a soldier or in the military for a long period of time, and they have a lot of shit going on in their life. But when you can take the most and the best out of the situation and what you learned, and then still apply it and keep growing it into your own arsenal, then it's something which will be a never-ending story of building and growing.
That's really insightful. So when you were in the military, Rowan, did you had a tour of Afghanistan, was that right?
Yeah, man, that's correct. In 2017.
When you knew that you were going to be sent there, how did you feel building up to that? Were you apprehensive? From someone who's not been in the military, I'm just interested to know how that feels. You know, when you've got to go and do something as big as that. How did that make you feel as a man, as a person?
Yeah, for me, of course, it's a bit excitement. It's a bit of scary, a bit fear. But it was something for me. It didn't make any sense if I was not going to Afghanistan or another like war zone, to be say it like that, because then I was just learning to do something but never putting it into practice. So back then it was not really often that so many military guys went on deployment on a tour, because in the unit where I was based, not everyone was going, and specifically in my function, I was working in a mechanic role, in an engineering role, leading a group of engineers. And back then they asked like, hey, we have a list of specific roles, you can apply for it, and if you've been chosen, then you can go. So at that list, there was nothing which really matched with my roles, my function, my degrees in the military. But I still applied. I thought, like, you know what? It doesn't matter. Just give it a shot. And there was one role for logistics, which I definitely didn't think if that was, and that wasn't definitely not really my most favorite thing to do. To be honest, logistics was never my thing. But at the end, yeah, I got on a tour as a logistic responsible of the whole Dutch contingent. So it was very funny to see something I always disliked became something which helped me go on tour, became something I learned a lot about. And also when I left the army, I've become team leader logistics in that corporate company. So this was also something which helped me grow in another position outside of the army. While before I really disliked logistics, I always told people like logistics is boring until I did it, and I learned so much from it, and I would never make another change and make the same decision.
In terms of leadership and leading people, then, Rowan, what would you say is the best way to lead people and also get them on side as well? Because you often see, well, I've often seen before, leaders as such or managers as such. When in fact, what they often do is they alienate the people below them because they talk down to them, and they lose respect in that way. So, what would you say are the key fundamental things in order to keep the team behind you and to be a efficient leader?
One of the most important things is vulnerability, right? When I became a leader in the army, I became a leader of a very experienced group. Most of the guys were almost double my age. So as an 18-year-old, leading guys 35, some guys and 20, like 28, 29 years old, but all older than me. At that moment, I could try to alienate them, but a group of 5 or 6 men, they push me back. Because at the end of the day, as a leader, I cannot do anything without my men, and they can do more without me because they were experienced and I was only teach to be like that leader manager. So at the beginning, sharing vulnerability, like, hey, okay, I don't know exactly what it is. Can you show me more about it? Can you tell me more about it? Learn a lot from them so that together, because they also know they need to work with you. So together you can build a stronger team. And so something I always tell to everyone, it's not you work for me, we work together. I truly believe that even though in the military it's like hierarchy and things like that with all ranks, but still at the end of the day we are all human. If you pull out our like ranks, we still are humans, and that we have different specialties, that we have different functions. That's perfect. But then let's use that together so that we can create one thing, and not so that they can create my thing, because it is we together. So always making sure that the people whom you are working with feel that they belong to that team instead of that they just work for you. It's better to help them identify that they work for themselves. And they can do it by working in a team.
When you were in Afghanistan, it sounds like you were all quite a good team. It took you a while to sort of show them vulnerability in that, which I think is really admirable. Once you become a team, when you're going on challenges and doing things or whatever you had to do out there, is there like conflicts within the group, or do people stay sort of as one team the whole time? I'm just interested to know how the dynamics are in that sort of situation.
Yeah, that's a very great question, because how it works is we always have like a certain timestamp. So, for example, we were there for 4.5 months, and we have overlap with the guys who were there the months before, and with the guys who are following up on us. So what we have seen is when we arrived, the previous group had a lot of personal issues with each other, because 4.5 months with people you don't even know that good, and now you live with them like 24/7, can give some conflicts. And what I've seen is with the group whom I went on tour with, we had an amazing connection. It was like crazy. Like that's something I always recall as the best brotherhood feeling I had in my life. Because at that moment, without any doubt, I could ask someone for help. They will help me. They will never try to fill their own ego to just be content with themselves. No, it's all together. And of course, there are some conflicts where people get annoyed by each other because some characteristics what don't match. But that's just we are humans. That's always what happens in a group if you've been together for a longer period of time. Small things build up to something bigger. Then some small conflicts happen. But overall, if you are communicating with each other, just tell each other like how you feel about something. If it doesn't feel good, just talk about it. And I had a platoon leader who was responsible like for our part of the whole Dutch support unit where I was part of. And yeah, he was such an amazing people manager, which also helped this feeling and vibe overall. So what we did for our small teams was basically aligned with what he did for us. And what I truly believe in, because I also worked, for example, in a corporate company where it was more performance-based, where it was more like ego-driven, because when you are not performing, you will get fired. So it is also something which is accelerating or like pushing for like more ego-driven approaches. And then what I saw was way more conflicts, way more people who just me against the world mentality. So yeah, all that kind of stuff just to try to jump the ladder. And that is something also one of the main reasons why I became like sort of a leadership coach in my coaching, because what I've seen with a lot of millennials, also with a lot of old school leaders, so many managers, almost nobody was a leader. And managers are also necessary in certain positions, but yeah, there is a lot of lack of leadership. People who really want to do everything for their team, really want to do everything for the people. Because the reason why I quit the corporate job was not because I wanted to become an entrepreneur at the beginning. Because at first I wanted to climb the ladder and become a really good like leader in the business, because it's a very, very big high-tech company in the Netherlands. So if you have a high position in that company, it's also very good financially. But from what I've seen, is too many managers just also always only for themselves. And I had a lot of conflicts with those people, because I don't like it when they just do things on the graves of other people, just to say it like that. Because in 1 year I had to fire like 45 people because of the management, all that kind of stuff, which was really not aligned with me, with my values. So I knew I just had to leave, because it was really eating me up from the inside out. Yeah, and luckily at that moment I also was slow but steady building my business, but I didn't think of doing it that quick to go all in. But I just knew my core values had been touched and harmed too much. So I just had to quit and go all in.
Yeah, I can totally resonate with what you're saying about the corporate world and the ego-driven environment. It's something that I've had experience with in my life. And like you, Rowan, it's something that I just couldn't tolerate. And that's something that I'm hoping I'll never have to experience again. I just wanted to delve a little bit deeper into the ego, because I often feel as though a lot of people don't really see ego as a thing. But the ego is actually a huge part of our personality, isn't it? So it's often the driver behind a lot of what we say and what we do and what we believe or how we act, isn't it? So people often think that that's just them, but the ego is actually something separate, isn't it? So the ego is like, can often be a negative thing, can't it? So how do you ensure that you keep your ego at bay? Because for me, I know it's a challenge sometimes, because you can slip back into those old ways, can't you? With like ego-driven thoughts, ego-driven actions.
Yeah, that's so yeah, ego is definitely a thing, especially right now. It's something it's being activated way more with social media, things like that. What I always do is try to really think of what is the essence in myself. Like, a lot of people right now don't dare to go into the depth of themselves. They just want to be on that surface level, to stay safe, to stay comfortable, to stay in their old patterns like they always had, which is maybe not fulfilling, but still it feels comfortable, because we also get addicted to our like problems, our challenges, as humans, and especially with alcohol, drugs, porn, easy things to get right now, to sedate all your things and to feed the ego. So to answer your question, how do I always make sure that it's in check, is doing a lot of self-reflection. This is something I've developed in the army, and this is something right now, what I'm doing is every action that I do in my mind is like a loop. I do something, I think about it. Was it good? Was it bad? Okay, what do I need to change next? And even though for some people that maybe sounds crazy, but for me it goes like a machine. Like, if I do something, I think about it. Do I need to change something about it? Yes or no? Next. So for example, something I learned with my girlfriend, I have a relationship for about 3 years right now. And I basically have been in a relationship for the last 9 years or so. And what I've learned from having a deep connection with someone, and especially going way deeper emotionally and intelligently with my current relationship than ever before, is when we have like an argument and I say something which comes from the ego, I always think of like, okay, what I just said, is it something because I just want to protect myself, my own thinking, or is it something based on the truth? So for example, then when she get mad, I always get back to her, say, hey, sorry, it was my mistake. This is what I've done wrong. This is why I could have done better. Because what I see with so much people, they just don't want to apologize. They just don't want to admit that they make mistakes. Well, I truly believe when you can admit your mistakes, basically that is the next step in learning from that mistake, never or almost never do it again. And that's part of growth. Like, when we do something wrong, acknowledge it, see how we can improve it, and try to do it next time better. If it's coming up again, and then you slow but steady, you get better at something, and this is something you can apply in everything in your life. And the ego, it's not that I'm egoless, because of course I'm also human, I'm also a man. Sometimes you think you need to be that man and try to be an alpha male. Sometimes still it is a thing, but not that much anymore. But the most important thing is that we acknowledge that we are just like anybody else, but we are on our own journey. And if someone else is trying to attack it, just let it be. It's their thing, not us.
From what you're saying there, you're basically describing sort of self-awareness. And I think self-awareness is so important, isn't it? And to constantly be accountable of our actions and how that impacts others and how that impacts ourselves and our own life is really important. Because like you say, if you do get wrapped up in the ego, you can lose touch with that, can't you? So the only real way to keep yourself accountable and keep your ego in check, from what you're saying, I think, and I agree because I do it as well the best I can, is to be as self-aware as possible, isn't it?
Yeah, and especially talking about it, speaking it out loud, writing it down. Something what works the best for me is journaling, like writing my thoughts on paper. Because when I'm not doing it, I always feel it after a couple of weeks. More worrying mind, more stressed, more anxious, and overall, I perform the best in the most stressful situations. But because it is of my self-awareness, because it is because I know what I value the most, because I know what are my core values and why are these so important for me. When you know them and you follow it, it's not an ego-driven thing, but it is more like a conscious and awareness-driven thing. Because you thought about it, you also know your why, the reason behind that action, and that awareness is gold.
Yeah, I think journaling's really powerful as well. So, as I mentioned to you earlier, Rowan, obviously the podcast is about mental health. If there's anyone listening right now who's really struggling and they're holding these thoughts in, or they're going through a hard time in their mind, what would be, if you don't mind, what would be your best advice for them to how to start to change that cycle of negative thinking?
One of the most strong things you can do, and it is super easy, and this is something I always do with my clients, is first we are going to write down like who we are, like trying to really nail down our identity and the ways of how do I see myself and how do I want to be seen. Like if we can connect those two, then you get your identity, like your self-image and the image you've got with other people. Because then you know your actions and the things you want to do. If they are aligned, you're going to build confidence. Because if you really want to do something, but you never do it, you are operating from a place of lack, because you know you want to do something, but you're still not doing it. So to give a short and brief answer on your question is write at least one thing down you've always wanted to do, but always kept procrastinating. And what we as humans do, we tend to be perfectionists. So we always want to do 10 times in 10x in 1 second. While it's better to slow but steady build your habit and scale it accordingly. So what I do, for example, is track my habits. And because I have a past experience with aiming way too high in way too short time, setting the bar too high. Yes, I know I can get it, but in this short period of time, it's too much. I learned to do it smaller steps, going for the long run. And I know that this is something a lot of people say, but the best thing you can ask yourself is what small step can I do today in order to grow in the direction I want to be? So if it is in your health, you want to healthy your body, ask yourself, what small step can I do to get into the habit of growing my body? So if it is something you say, I want to work out 6 times a week, but you never done it, you never worked out even once a week, maybe you can start with doing like 5,000 steps. And then after 5,000 steps, you're going to add one workout. After 1 week of one workout, you do 2, and then 3. And of course, this is really slow, but just to give you an example and the mindset you want to have. Like sometimes it's better to start way too small than too big. Because if you start too small, you build momentum, you enjoy it because you are doing exactly what you want to do and you're hitting your goal. And when you get in the momentum of hitting your goals, you feel subconsciously like a winner, even though you're not at the result yet, but you fall in love with the process instead of falling in love with the end result, because that is something, if you are only focused on the end result, you will always see and feel that your thought of feeling a certain way when you're hit it, but 99 out of 100%, you never feel that way as you thought of feeling at the moment of hitting that goal.
Yeah, I really like that insight, and I think I completely agree with it, because you often see, I don't know about in your country, Rome, but definitely in this country, there's definitely a habit of people setting a bar too high. So say, for example, I don't know, as an example, there's a guy who's like really overweight, really wants to lose weight, and he's been eating really unhealthy. All of a sudden he sees this diet, bam, he just wants to stop and just like completely cut everything out all at once, this huge step. And then 2 weeks later, boom, he fails. And it's no surprise, is it? Because like you say, the best ways, especially if it's an ingrained problem that's been going on for a long time, is to start with small steps, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And especially in the example, what you just mentioned is that you're not getting that result, what you thought of hitting. That's one thing, but that very, very big hit on your self-esteem of again not hitting something, of again not accomplishing something you really thought of that you could do or really wanted to do is getting you so big challenge and pain on yourself, on your mental well-being. So the smallest steps, and of really focusing on, you know what, if I can do 1% better every single day, I'm progressing. So if you are trusting on yourself, if you can do even 1% more on whatever you want to accomplish every single day, you're growing. Because that 1% in a long period of time is a lot more, of course. And also that 1% is also growing the more you do something. So this is something I struggled a lot with, really, because when I was young, I was always like the best player at soccer, winning a lot of trophies, things like that. And as all out of sudden, I wasn't that kid anymore. And I mentally struggled for like 10 years because I always was chasing that feeling of being a winner again. So I always set the bar high, but never accomplished it anymore. I was still doing way more than I maybe expected from myself, but because I did not hit that goal, I felt like a loser. So at that moment, and this was basically before I became a coach, like even 1 year ago, I recognized that same pattern. And then I got me thinking like, you know what? In the army, they teach me drills. So those drills are repetitive tasks or things you need to do so that you can do them in any situation with stress, blindfolded, whatever. And how did they do it? By repetitions, every single time. Starting small, growing it bigger, and doing it a lot. And that got me thinking like, you know what? Back in the days, I was not running a marathon the first day. It was small steps, a lot of steps, every single day, or a lot of times. So repetitions are the most important thing.
And I think you kind of touched on there about running as well. And for me, running is a really good way to see that in a physical form. So, we're talking about this idea of small steps, create a much bigger thing. Running's really good because each day you run a bit faster, run a bit harder, run a bit better, and you see those little bits of improvement. So that sort of backs up what we're saying about sort of those little improvements that build the bigger picture. You're not just going to be a marathon runner like the next day, are you? No, I 100% agree there. How important do you think healthy eating is, Rowan? I mean, how's your diet? Do you generally healthy all the time? Do you have some treats, or are you completely strict healthy eating? Or just give us a little insight on that, man.
Yeah, so I have a health and fitness coach like for a 1.5 year right now. I'm really passionate about bodybuilding. I'm never planning to do a show, but I'm really also training in that style, eating in that style. But in the last year during this pandemic, it was way more difficult because a lot of new things in my life, right? Starting the business, weird stuff in the world going on. So for me right now, like the last 3-4 months, I've been slacking on it a bit. It's not that I'm feeling bad about it. I just knew it's sometimes you have situations and seasons in life for everything. So for me, it was not really the strictest lifestyle, especially with lockdowns and gym, things like that. Shouldn't be an excuse, that to be said, but still, overall, I'm eating very healthy because I just feel way better. I feel way better, look way better, confidence gets higher. But also, and I truly believe it's garbage in, garbage out. So if you eat a lot of easy stuff like snacks or like not high quality foods, you will feel it because you will also have less energy or you will not perform the best you can. And for me, being on a diet also helps me to stay disciplined and structured. So that is something I really learned about the last year. Like if I'm not following my diet and just doing something, this will also reflect on other areas of my life. It will reflect in my business. It will reflect in my personal life. It will reflect basically in anything. Because even something stupid like not having that structure made me also think of like being way more easygoing with coming on time. So I was sometimes later than I usually was. All those kind of small things. And I think this is also a really good thing for your question about what is that tip to build your confidence is if you can find one thing, you know how to do it, and you can make it small steps at a time, and you do it for a long period of time. If you can do it in one thing, you can do it in everything, because that principle, I truly believe, can be applied in anything in life. So if it is for you, for example, you're all about running, and you know tomorrow I'm going to run a 7K run, the next day a 7.1, until you run like a full marathon. That same principle now you can apply in business. So instead of running 7K, you're going to send 10 messages, then 11, then you know how much. So that's also building confidence, because you know, if I can do it in this area, I can do it basically in everything.
Yeah, I think healthy eating, like you say, is just so important. And again, also keeping disciplined as well. It's definitely really important in that respect. So for me, I've always been honest on this podcast. You know, even now, my biggest challenge is probably eating healthy. Like I generally eat healthy a lot, but then I fall off the wagon, eat rubbish and stuff like that. I don't know if you know, but the British diet isn't exactly the healthiest in the world, but it is improving. Yeah. Things are improving and stuff, you know. But I have had big problems. I used to be like 4 stone heavier, like a few years ago, and that. So I have lost all that weight, and I'm probably in the best position I've been now. I keep myself well now, but I do sometimes struggle, and I end up eating rubbish that I wish that I didn't. But I am now learning. I'm probably in the last sort of month or two, besides Christmas, of course. I'm definitely learning that it's so important, healthy in terms of the way it makes you feel. Because I don't know about where you are, but in this country, there's almost not that connection between eating and feeling. I don't honestly believe that people really understand the impact of how what you eat makes you feel. And it's for me, I've really learned like how important it is. So yeah, definitely 100%. So Rowan, I just wanted to now delve into what you're up to now, because I know we spoke about you in the military and then you were in a corporate company. You left that because it wasn't for you, but now you're a coach for entrepreneurs, aren't you? So give us a bit of background and how anyone can get involved if they're listening, if they're interested, in how to become a better leader.
Yes, man. So right now I'm helping mainly male entrepreneurs around millennial age, so 20 to 35, 40 years old. And that's like my main target. And what do? I basically help them become a more influential leader in business, relationships, and life. What does that mean? Is if they struggle to build their business, for example, scale to 10 or 20 or 50K months, I help them with that so that they also have more time on focusing on other areas in their life. Because again, I truly believe if you can build a business very successful, you also should be successful in your body, in your mind, in your relationships. And successful is something is very different for everybody. So if I'm content with being shredded 6-pack abs, then that's my standard. But that doesn't mean that everyone has to do it. I truly believe just go what fulfills you. What is your goal in that area? And at least aim for that standard. And don't stop until you are living that standard, because life's too short to just be in lack all our life. So focusing on the business, but more importantly, what I do is I delve deep into what are they themselves. So like, who are they authentically? So really step into their own power so that they can perform their best. And what I've seen is by doing so, it's not like the next marketing strategy. It's not the next business thing. It's everything you already have in your arsenal, but now someone who's calling you out, who is holding you accountable for your own goals and going to that next level. So some guys gain muscle while scaling their business like 3 or 7 times. Some guys are connecting way deeper with their relationships while building their businesses. Some guys maintain their business while focusing on more growth in the other areas. The most important thing is that you are getting more out of yourselves and getting basically the best out of you. And finally live that life you really want to live.
I mean, just before coronavirus happened, I used to work in events, and I used to basically work on production of events. So I'd often be dealing with like the CEOs or the leaders of companies on corporate events. So I'd be helping them set up for an event and stuff. So, and I often notice, like you said, that a lot of the most higher performing CEOs, they do take care of themselves, like physically as well. They're in good shape. I mean, there's probably one or two that maybe weren't, but I think generally as a rule of thumb, if you're going to be a high performer at the high end that you're talking about, the clients that you deal with, Rowan, I think it's important that, you do look after yourself and you are as well as you can be in your lifestyle as well as your business, isn't it?
Yeah, and what I've seen with basically all the guys is when you have one area in your life, and for example, I created a framework which I call the Tactical Six, and there are like 6 areas. It's mind, body, spirit, impact, balance, and business. So if you are having a lack in one of these 6 areas, your self-esteem is also lower, because you're playing a catch-up game. It feels like playing a catch-up game. Like, once I hit this milestone, I'm going to do this. While if we think of what can we even do today to already focus on that area we want to improve, we feel way happier, because now we see, hey, it's still possible to be that man I want to be. And if you're having a lack, you always operate from a place of lack and scarcity. So when shit hits the fan, just to say it like that, you will get stressed. You will be overwhelmed. You will do things you don't want to do. You are not operating from that strong foundation all the time. Because when you are thriving, being just good on one thing can be good for a long period of time. But once shit hits the fan, it can be a one-hit wonder. And then it's really hard to be back at it. And this is what I see with almost all the guys, is they think of, once I hit 6 figures in my business, or once I hit 7 figures, my whole life will change. But then they hit that number, and then they have a new excuse to not do what they really want to do. And then it becomes an addiction. And basically it is all because they are not really clear of what is really their purpose. They are just wearing different masks, being someone else. No, going back to the essence of you, going all in what you want to do. And then okay, if I want to be a better businessman, I also have to be a better, healthier body. Because if I, for example, see a manager who is like 20, 30 kgs overweight, and he tends to be a very good leader, I still ask myself the question, like, if he cannot really take care of himself, how is he going to think that he is going to be a good leader? And it doesn't have to be six-pack shredded, just having a healthy lifestyle. Because also it's not just what you say, but also is what you do, being that living, breathing example. And it gains way more respect from the people you work with, because then we see, hey, you know what, he's on point in all areas. He looks indestructible. And of course, we are humans. We are not perfect. We have our periods of time. But it helps a lot with going back on track way faster.
Yeah, and I think it also goes back to about, controlling the ego as well, especially when you're at that high level where you're in a position of power as well. I can imagine the ego can really get out of control if you don't sort of get it back under control. I sometimes see people who they're doing quite well financially, but they're not very happy in themselves as well. So I think that also backs up that idea that there's a lot of people out there, they think that when they're going to get to a certain point of wealth, like you said earlier, that everything's going to be okay then. But really, there's so much more to it than that, isn't there? It doesn't mean that once you get to that point, when you've got enough money, you don't have to worry about money, that life's going to be okay, does it? It's about understanding you and being the best you as well, isn't it?
Yeah. And most people who say, when I hit this number, everything will change, they think that the internal will be changed. They try to fix the internal of themselves with external things. And of course, that is not how it works. We need to go deep internally to fix that. So then the external can be an amplifier of what's positive. Because you probably know it as well. Money and external stuff is basically like an amplifier of yourself. Your business is a reflection of you. So if something is not aligned in you, it will be seen in your business. So if you are very ego-driven, your business will also be very ego-driven. If you struggle a lot mentally, a lot of anxiousness, a lot of stress, it will reflect on your business. If you're not structured, your business will also not be structured. So it's basically like a mirror telling you exactly how it looks like. And if you're not happy with yourself, you will also not be happy with your business. And then you think the business will help you be happy with yourself. But that is a reflection of you. So that state will always be reflected in the business.
Yeah, that's really insightful, Rowan. And I think that's a really good point. We're gonna leave it there. But I just wanted to say thank you for joining me on the podcast today. I've really enjoyed the conversation. It's been really insightful for me. I've absolutely loved your content on social media. That's why I wanted you on the podcast in the first place. So what I'll do is I'll pop links for your social medias in the podcast description so people can follow you, and also we'll put details about your program as well. But thanks again, Rowan, and I wish you all the best for 2021.
Thank you, man. Have a nice day as well, man.
Thank you. Take care. So I hope you all enjoyed listening to that. I've got some really exciting guests lined up for the next few weeks coming up, and just remember, it's okay not to be okay.